Okay, Matt, we're talking about muscular contractions a lot, but we know running downhill hurts.
Yeah. I mean, running just hurts, right? This is why every time I try and get back into running, I'm just sore for days, right? And I
Right, we
know not
should
to go too
preface
hard or
that with
anything.
you're mainly a road cyclist mountain biker.
Yeah, yeah. So when I go for a run, suddenly I have these eccentric contractions I'm just not prepared for. And this is why when you go and do your marathon or you get off the couch and you go for a run, why you're so wrecked, it's because these eccentric contractions.
And how do they work? How do they differ versus a concentric or isometric contraction?
Okay, so concentric contraction is when the muscle just shortens. So the muscle pulls and our leg, for example, will extend. That's a concentric contraction. So maybe walking up a step, right? That's concentric contraction. You pull the muscles and you go up. So what's happening?
Or opening the fridge door.
We all know that one. Yeah. So you're just pulling. The actin and the myosin cross bridge attachments are doing what they're meant to do. They're pulling, right? So that's great. We can create plenty of force doing a muscular contraction that way. On the other side, we can think about when we're walking down the steps, right? So,
yeah, or someone's is pulling the fridge door away from you, and you have to resist it.
Okay, so
you're pulling it further and further away. No,
you're trying to pull the fridge back, right? Or stop it from moving. What's happening is you're pulling your muscle with those myosin cross-bridge formations. The muscle is trying to stretch due to some other external force. So that's walking down the steps. You are creating force with your muscles. Otherwise, you would end up in a whole heap rolling down the steps and you would kind of never stop. So what you need to do is you need to create force as the muscle is stretching. And the issue there is these cross-bridge formations are being pulled apart. And this is one of the reasons why an eccentric contraction, such as running, where we're constantly stretching every time we hit the ground, this is why there's so much pain and damage done to the muscle with those eccentric contractions. It's because of that pulling.
You're trying to keep yourself upright while the muscle is trying to rip those cross bridges apart. It's trying to lengthen, but it's trying to lengthen under load. And then you think about running downhill, not only is it lengthening under load, but it's lengthening under a high rate of load with the added force of, your mass times gravity times the, gradient. All right, Matt. And then we've got isometric, which is we're just trying to hold steady.
Yeah, so an isometric contraction is when the muscle isn't even changing length. So if you think about your fridge again, this is you trying to move the fridge, but you don't realize it's against the wall or something like that. So you're pushing, but your muscle isn't changing length at all. So it's contracting, but not changing length.
Right. Then we have this diagram that is very colorful, but kind of confusing. We've got force on the y-axis and velocity on the x-axis.
So Will, let's have a look at this force velocity curve. So we can create a lot of force eccentrically, and we really need to do that if we're doing something like walking down the steps, because if we weren't able to create a lot of force, we would just kind of fall into a heap and roll down the steps and keep on going.
Yeah, and then if we decided to run down the steps.
Yeah, so as gravity is assisting us down the steps, we're adding that, and we still need to create a lot of force. So we need to be able to create a lot of force eccentrically so we don't just fall over. Now you can think of this also when you think about a squat, something like a heavy squat. Not all of us are doing that. Strength training is great, but we'll get into that another time. But what we can imagine is we imagine a weightlifter taking a barbell off of the rack and bringing that heavy weight down, right? So very often they can bring that heavy weight down and stop themselves from falling into a heap, but then they might get into trouble trying to bring that weight back up. So they can create a lot of force and stop that weight from falling down, and then bringing it back up is a different story. So they're not able to create as much force.
Right. Same with a bench press. Matt, if you throw 200 pounds, no, maybe not, maybe 150 pounds, I can probably bring that down a lot of force, but I can't, and I can probably bring it down pretty quick just to stop myself from getting completely crushed. But there's no way I'd be able to push that back up. So if we reduce the weight, Matt, so rather than 150 pounds, it's like 10 pounds. I can bring it down super quick, but I can also throw it up super quick. So that means because there's so little force, I can do something really quickly. I can increase the velocity versus having to, increase the weight and decrease my velocity. So if we think about that in terms of training, we might have sprint training. So I'm going to sprint 100 meters. That doesn't matter if it's in the pool, on the bike, or whatever. I'm not going to generate a lot of force because I have to go really fast. Now we compare that to going into the gym and doing a 1 max squat. I have to generate a lot of force, but I'm going to do it pretty slowly. I'm not going to be sprinting 100 meters in 10 seconds. I'm going to be trying to lift my 200 pounds up and down in about the same amount of time, the same kind of 10 seconds. So because that relationship is inverse.